In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, I am very grateful to God for being able to have this week together. No matter how many times we thank Him, it's not enough. And I also apologize because I feel very warm, so I am not in a formal dress. It's family, so it's okay. And I am hoping that after a beautiful presentation by Robbie, we feel all spiritual, and I hope God helps me also with my presentation, so that we can have some understanding of Islamic spirituality. In about 2000, 2001, I was writing a book on Shia Islam for Islamic College in London. And I was thinking, what would a potential reader expect, from me to write when you want to know something about, denomination of Islam or faith. I mentioned something about the origins of Shia Islam, about early development, about sources, about practices, doctrines, about some holy cities, some statistics. But then I was thinking that there is this need for something more. And if someone wants to know what is the spirit of Shia Islam, what is the major characteristic of Shia Islam, something that you can find it present in theology, in spirituality, in history. So, three things came to my mind. And then, since then, every time I think, I am convinced that those three things are very much, important and central, and they can do justice to explaining the characteristic of Shia Islam. But it doesn't mean that it is only for Shia Islam. It can be for other Muslims, it can be even for Christians. In 2015, we had dialogue with World Council of Churches, and the topic was how to avoid violence in the name of religion. And I suggested these three, and then all agreed that Muslims, Christians, we all should have these three to avoid any violence or extremism. So when I say we as Shias believe in this, first, it doesn't mean it's only for Shia. Secondly, it doesn't mean that every Shia has practiced and implemented this. But this is that what I see in history of my community, in the teachings of our scholars, and especially the examples of our infallible Imams and the Prophet. And sometimes I say it's a sense of humor, I say these three are our Trinity. So, one is rationality. In our understanding of Islam, reason or intellect plays a great role. And as we saw yesterday in Introduction to Islam, one of the sources for understanding Islam for us is intellect. The Quran is the most important source. We have Sunnah, teachings of sayings of the Prophet and his family, but also reason or intellect. It's very important. In Islamic theology, some Muslims take reason as the source, some no. So there are people that are different. Once, I had a discussion with a person who was Muslim but not very much in favor of reason. And I don't want to go into the discussion, it takes time, but it was interesting that he was saying me, you are using aql Apple made his intellect. So he was, criticizing me by saying, "You are using your intellect." And for me, it was very strange because for me, it's a credit if someone says you use your intellect, because the Quran keeps telling us that you should reflect, you should ponder, you should use intellect. And Quran criticizes the people who don't use intellect. But this person, was saying, why you are using your apple? In any case, rationality has led to many developments, especially you can see it in the way we understand God, we understand many things. Intellectual sciences like logic and philosophy have been very much developed, but it's not exclusive to Shia Muslims, but it's not available in all branches of Islam. Some are closer to this approach, some are far away. Anyway, rationality is one element. The other element is spirituality. To be rational and to be spiritual at the same time is not easy. Because some people think to be spiritual, you just need to stop thinking and rationalizing and just follow the instruction. Don't think too much, don't have critical mind, because you cannot be spiritual. But for us, no. We think we need to have rationality and spirituality together. Mind and heart should work together. Otherwise, we may end up with some kind of spirituality which suffers from some superficial or superstitious ideas. We need rationality and spirituality together. And the third element is search for justice. Because sometimes you may have even rationality and spirituality together, but you fail to attend to the current affairs, especially to justice. So we try to be very concerned also about justice. And therefore one of our 5 principles is divine justice, but not as something just about God. How divine justice should be echoed in social justice. And the Quran says God has sent all the messengers to help humanity to stand up for social justice. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. So the aim of all the messengers was to help people establish social justice. When we have social justice, we can be closer to God. Okay? But if you have social justice as your aim without rationality, you can create problem. Or without a spirituality, you can do lots of egoistic things, selfish things in the name of justice. Yeah? So we have seen many people who worked for justice, but when they themselves became powerful, they forgot. They added to injustice. They take power. As long as they are in opposition, they talk about justice. But when they take power, they forget. So, spirituality, rationality, and search for justice should be together. And if these 3 are together, we have harmony. We have balance. We will have the best of everything. So, I want now to talk about one of these elements, which is spirituality. But in this rational approach and with leading to having also social justice. Okay? So it's not just something between you and God. Islamic spirituality is between you and God, but the path towards God goes through people. You cannot find God alone and say, I want to improve my relation with you, but I don't bother about people. It's impossible. If you want to get closer to God, certainly you have to make sure that you love His people. You are kind to them, you are humble, as I will try to explain. So, one of the key principles for us that I think we share all of us, is that we all come from God. Yeah? This is very important. And this is something that, thanks to God, no one can change. It's a fact. Every human being has a holy beginning. We all come from God. We are not results of chance. We are not here by accident or by explosion or anything like that. We are all coming from God, who is wise, who is kind, who is merciful, and who has a purpose. So He has created us for a purpose. Every human child is born with innocence, with purity. We believe that every human child is innocent and is born with light. No matter whether parents have faith or not, every child is born from God, is coming with light. Okay? كل مولود يولد على الفطرة. The same humanity that is in each of us is available in every child born in any part of the world. Okay? And God has given from Himself our spirit. The Quran says God told the angels that when I create Adam and blow into him from my spirit, you should prostrate before him. So He gave from His spirit to Adam. Of course, we understand, because we use our intellect, we understand that God doesn't have any parts or any spirit like us. He calls human spirit His spirit. Okay? As we have house of God, but God doesn't have house. Any house that belongs to God and serves humanity is house of God. We have days of God. God doesn't have day and night. So anything holy, anything that reminds us of God can be attributed to God. God says human spirit, human soul is His spirit. And this is given to every human being. We all have this gift of human soul, which is coming from God. Plus, God is very close to all of us. God is not far from us. The Quran says, God is closer to us than our jugular vein. God stands between us and our heart. This is all literally said in the Quran. For the sake of saving time, I don't mention the verse. So, God is very close to us, even not only closer than our family members or friends, even closer than ourselves to ourselves. God knows me better than me. God knows what is happening in my heart more than I know. Okay? So, He is very close to everyone. He is with you wherever you are. But, then you may say, then what is the problem? If we are all from God, and He is with everyone, He is closer to us than ourselves, then everything is sorted out. No. What we understand from the Quran is that God is very close to us, but we may not be close to Him. Our challenge is to move towards Him. You may say, how it comes? How can God be close to us but we are not close to Him? If you are 5 meters away from me, and therefore I am also 5 meters away from you. Yeah? If this ceiling has certain distance from me, I have the same distance from the ceiling. So how can God be close to us but we are not close to Him? The answer is that in physical distance, both sides have the same distance. But when it comes to intellectual, spiritual distance, one can be closer, but the other is far. For example, you as a very experienced and loving and caring teacher, you are very close to the children. You understand what is happening to them, their emotions, everything you understand. Questions go into their mind, you understand. But how much that student is close to you? It's not going to be the same. Or as a father or mother, you are very close to your children, but your children are not that close to you, and also they have different distances. Maybe you love all your children the same, but they don't love you the same. They don't have the same distance from you. I'm not talking about physical distance, I'm talking about intellectual, emotional, spiritual distance. When we meet a holy person, he is much closer to us than we are to him. Because for us to be close to him, we have to be at his level, and we are not at his level. If I am a student of philosophy and I meet some of the great philosophers of the world, as a student of philosophy, how much I am close to that great philosopher? Very little, because I don't know philosophy. I'm a student. Maybe I know 1% of his knowledge, so I am just that much close to him. But he knows me, and he knows everything about philosophy, so he is much closer to me. Or for example, if we think about the sun, if you talk about physical distance, we have the same distance. But if you talk about impact, we are not close to the sun because we have no impact on the sun, but sun is close to us and gives energy to all of us, gives light to all of us. Okay? So, it's very possible that someone is close to us, but we are not necessarily as close as he or she is. God is close to all of us, but we need to work towards getting closer and closer to him. So this is the summary, as Robbie said. It was very right understanding that in Islam, the main thing is we want to get closer and closer to God. Everything we do, every word we say, every action, even our thoughts and intentions, they should help us to go closer to God. And the problem is that it's not either you go closer or you just remain where you are. You may go closer or you may go farther away. It's very hard to imagine, very hard, although maybe mathematically we can say it's possible, but it's very hard not to move closer and not to move farther away and just remain where you are. It's very difficult because either you are moving towards light or darkness. It's almost impossible to remain as equal as you used to be, because by the passage of time you are responsible to bring something good. If you don't bring something good, you lose your credit. So we are continuously moving closer or farther away. Or in another way, the Quran says, either you are moving from darkness to light or from light to darkness. Okay? خروج من الظلمات إلى النور or من النور إلى الظلمات. These are two things that we keep doing. If we were able to see what is happening in the spiritual world behind the scene, you would see each of us continuously, either we are receiving more light or we are losing some of our light. So our light is continuously changing. Every word, every action, every intention, every thought, every look, all can bring light or can take some of our light. Can take us closer to God or can take us farther away from God. So this is the summary of what we want to do. Now, if we want to make sure that we keep going towards God, what should we do? We need to have first knowledge of God, what we call ma'rifah. Ma'rifah of God is very important. In Arabic, we have two terms for knowledge. One is ilm, another is ma'rifah. We have some other terms for understanding, which might be similar, but the main two terms for knowledge is ilm and ma'rifah. Ilm is general knowledge. For example, I knew of Mariapolis Piero, even before coming to Mariapolis Piero. But that was very general. But when I came here and made personal acquaintance with Mariapolis Piero and people here, now I don't have general knowledge, I have very personal experience. Yes? This is ma'rifah. So, we may have knowledge of God in a very general way, like someone that you have never met. You have never had personal encounter, yeah? You can have ma'rifah of God. You can have very personal experience of God. This is very much different, like someone you have lived with. If you have lived with God, it's different from reading about God in the books of theology and philosophy, or people talk about God. That's totally different. If you have lived with God, is affecting, it's shaping, influencing, forming you, because no one can have acquaintance with God and not falling in love with God, not being overwhelmed by love of God. Yeah? So as soon as you really know God, you love Him immensely, and then you love others for the sake of God. There is a beautiful verse in the Quran that God says to the Prophet, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. Because of you receiving mercy from God, you have become very gentle with people. Because when you receive something from God, it's so much powerful that it will overflow. I cannot receive mercy from God and keep it to myself. If I receive mercy from God, overflows. If I receive knowledge or wisdom or love, whatever I receive from God, it overflows. It must reach others very naturally. If you receive light from God, even if you don't notice, people will feel that they are also receiving light. It doesn't depend on your decision, automatically goes. So, the first thing that in Islamic spirituality we have to do is to know more about God, to the extent that then we will develop ma'rifah of God, personal acquaintance with God. Therefore, we call the people who are very close to God, we call them Arif. Arif is the one who has ma'rifah of God. There is a very beautiful description of Arif in one of our books, Misbah al-Sharia, the Lantern of the Path. This is a book which is attributed to our sixth Imam. It's containing some of his teachings, and in the section about Al-Arif, who is a mystic, you can translate mystic or, Arif. It says, Al-Arifu shakhsuhu ma'al khalq wa qalbuhu ma'allah. Arif is the one who lives among people, but his heart is with God. Arif may come among us, may talk to us, may eat with us, but without being distracted from God. No encounter would distract him from God. He's very focused and continuously connected with God. لو سهى قلبه عن الله طرفة عين لَمَاتَ شَوْقًا إِلَيْهِ. If for an eye blink, this Arif is distracted from God, is heedless of God, he will die out of missing God so eagerly. They cannot live without connection with God. This is our understanding of holy people. So it's not that when they go to pray, they remember God. Day and night, they are connected with God. And there are many beautiful things here. It needs more time. So, I leave it for another opportunity. The very first thing is knowing God in a very personal way and trying to make personal relation with God. The second thing is we need to obey God. We need to act according to His will, as again Robbie said in the Focolare Sprituality, to do will of God. Not because God needs our obedience. God doesn't need our obedience. Imam Ali, in his sermon of the pious, he says, "Inna Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala khalaqa al-khalq qaniyan an ta'atihi." He created people without having any need for their obedience. لأنه لا تنفعه طاعة من أطاعه ولا تضره معصية من عصاه. Neither the obedience of those who are obedient benefits God, nor those who disobey can harm God. So He doesn't need our obedience. It's for our sake. If God tells us something, it's like, for example, a physician tells you, take this prescription. If you take the prescription and you are healed, you benefit. Not that, you say, I have done something good to the doctor because I obeyed the doctor's advice. If teacher tells you to do this exercise, it's for your sake. If parents tell their children for their own development to do something, it's for them. Yes, we human beings sometimes may say people to obey us because, I need your obedience, I need your support. But God is not like us. God is like a selfless father, selfless physician or teacher. So, by doing what God asks us, this is very much central in Islamic spirituality. By listening to God and obeying God and submitting to the will of God, not only we can go closer to Him, we can also bring light to our own life. It's impossible to get closer to God and not bring light to your life or family life or community. Okay? There are many verses of the Quran that says a very central part of faith is ihsan. Ihsan means to bring goodness and beauty, to be kind, to be benevolent. So, I should keep thinking all the time, what are the things that God expects from me? How should I obey God? There are things that we learn in Islamic jurisprudence. Islamic jurisprudence is a way for us understanding many acts of obedience. But these are main ones, these are fixed ones, these are general ones. Otherwise, in every moment, I have to find out what is expected by God from me. Maybe it is not prayer or fasting or alms giving or going to Mecca, those things that yesterday we heard. Maybe it's just to smile at someone, because those are general ones. But in every moment you can do something godly. To listen to someone, to give a cup of water to someone. Okay? So we have some what we call legal or jurisprudential acts of obedience, but there is no limit for that. We have lots of ethical, spiritual acts of obedience. And then, after acquaintance with God, which happens through philosophy, theology, after making sure that we keep obeying God and submitting to the will of God, the third would be developing virtues, developing characteristics of a faith. And actually, this is very important part of the spirituality, part of self-development. I can do kind acts, which is great, but it's not enough. I can do generous acts, it's great, but not enough. I should develop kindness and generosity as virtues in my heart. There is a big difference. You have to be a kind person. Even if there is no one there to show kindness, you have to have this virtue of kindness. You have to have virtue of generosity, even if you are poor. You can be generous and poor, or generous and there is no one to give. What is more important than just doing things out of kind, for example, intention, or out of generous intention, is to do things out of kindness as a virtue. This means this has become part of your nature. You don't need to force yourself to be kind. You don't need to, make calculation. Should I make this person happy or not? If I make happy, God is going to reward me. How much is going to reward? You don't need to do these calculations, because you have become kind. You have become generous. You have become truthful. You have become honest. You have become trustworthy. You have become loyal. And these virtues are all actually shared in Islam and Christianity. I don't think there is any virtue that we differ on. By developing these virtues, we become closer to God. We have a beautiful saying which is summarized in many things. It says, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Try to acquire godly characteristics. As Sister Shahnaz mentioned yesterday, some of the characteristics of God are exclusive to Him. Yeah? But most of the characteristics are shared between us and God. For example, one of the characteristics of God is that He is high. He has kibriya. We as human beings have to be humble. We cannot resemble God in being high, in the sense that we have no need for anyone, anything. No, that's for God only. But God is wise, we have to become wise. We cannot be like Him in being absolutely wise, but we can try to resemble Him. God is very kind, merciful, loving, forgiving, truthful, all the 99 names of God and more. Most of them we can also try to acquire. So, a very important part of Islamic spirituality is to develop virtues. Sometimes some spiritual masters, they summarize all Islamic spirituality in three things. They say the first step is takhliya. Takhliya means to empty yourself from vicious traits of character. Imagine they give you a house. It's not a new house. So the first thing is you remove any furniture that you don't want, any rubbish which is there, you remove dust. Yeah, that's the first thing you have to do, takhliya, to empty house from anything which is not good. The second is tahliya, to beautify the house, to bring good furniture, rugs, maybe curtain to paint. And the third is tajliya, that the house will be shining and a beautiful place to go and live and invite others. So they say the spirituality is like this. First, you remove any vicious traits of character, any bad habits, bad actions, you have to remove and stop them. Then you bring good actions, you develop good traits of character, and then you will shine. You reflect light of God. So we have to continuously monitor ourselves. This is a very important element in Islamic spirituality. Self-monitoring, muraqabah. Watch yourself. A person on the spiritual journey must continuously watch himself or herself. What I say, what I do, my traits of character, my feeling. For example, my brother has got, for example, something positive. For example, God has given him, I don't know, a good job or whatever. How do you feel? You should always watch yourself. Do you feel happy? Or you feel jealous? Or you feel nothing? As a grateful person, you have to be grateful that God has given your brother something positive. So you need to watch your heart, watch your mouth, watch your ear, watch your eyes, watch everything continuously. So when we remove bad habits, bad actions, and develop good actions, good habits, and virtues, then we are in a position that we can say we are nearer to God. And then this continues, you keep going closer and closer till you become muqarrab. According to Quran, muqarrab are those that who are very close to God. We seek nearness, means we are mutaqarrab. We seek nearness. But muqarrab is the one who is brought by God near himself. You may say, isn't it that God brings everyone closer to him? The answer is this. With the help of God, I seek nearness to him. And the Quran says that God is also with the people who want to do good. Okay? He helps us. And in the hadith it says, if you go walking towards God, he will run towards you. Okay? So he helps everyone. But in a spiritual journey, we reach a point that you no longer can go further. It's only then work of God. Before I do something and God helps me, but then reaches the point that I am exhausted. I have done everything that I could. At that point, then it's a turning point. God takes you nearer. Therefore, muqarrab is someone who is brought nearer by God. Or we have mukhlis and mukhlas. Mukhlis is someone who is purifying himself and actions. Mukhlas means purified by God. Or mutatahhir and mutahhar. I use this example. Imagine you want to see a very wise person who lives in a very high place in mountains. You get the direction, you go closer and closer and closer, but then you reach a very sharp height of the mountain that you cannot climb. You are exhausted. You're tired already, and you have no experience of this height. Then that is the time that he would be the only agent. Okay? So there is a double agency, but a time comes that God is the only agent. This is for muqarrabin. So those are very close to God. So I want to end with highlighting three qualities which are very important in this process of spirituality, and they are also connected with the topic of unity. And these are the qualities that God loves very much, and we can resemble God by developing these three qualities. One is to be humble. Human beings through humbleness can resemble God, not through being arrogant. If you want to be godly, we have to be humble. When you are humble, God raises you. The hadith says, "Man tawaza'a lillah rafa'ahu Allah." We believe Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Prophet Muhammad were very close to God, but they were the most humble people of their time. With humility, we grow. With arrogance, we die. Spiritually, we die with arrogance. But humbleness is not only before God. So that when God says, because there are people that even they are not humble before God. They are arrogant, they don't listen to God. God says, you should do this, they say, no, I know better. But humbleness is not only between us and God. We should be humble also before people. This is the main challenge. Not just humble before you and God. What was the problem of Satan? Satan for 6,000 years worshipped God. But God asked him once to be humble before Adam. Satan refused. He said, I can worship you, but I don't want to be humble before Adam. I am better than Adam. So he lost everything because he had arrogance and bias. So we need to learn how to be humble before people of God, not just before God. And I should be humble before everyone. I shouldn't be humble only before people who are older than me. I should be humble before everyone. Whether they are younger than me, older than me, more knowledgeable than me, less knowledgeable than me, I should be humble before everyone. This is the way to go forward towards God. This is a very important part of Islamic spirituality. If I feel I am special, if I feel I am very close to God, it means I have not achieved anything. If I think I have reached the level of spirituality that people should bow for me, down, means you have achieved nothing. If you are very much down to the earth, there is hope that you have made some progress. We have to check other qualities as well. Are you rational or not? But very important quality to be down to the earth. When our Prophet was sitting with his companions and a stranger was entering the mosque, he was not able to understand who was the Prophet. He didn't have any special chair or bed or throne or, for example, security, a special dress. He was like anyone else. Yes, if he speaks, if they spend time to see his spirituality, that's different. But he didn't choose any physical sign of being better or higher or things like that. So one is humbleness. The second thing is gratitude. We have to be grateful. Actually, if you are humble, you are always grateful for the gifts you receive. If you are not humble, whatever you receive, you take them for granted. A humble child is very grateful for what he receives from parents. A child who is not humble also is not grateful. Thinks, I deserve more. My parents didn't do anything for me. So, we need to be grateful. And actually, one of the qualities of God in Islam, which is mentioned in the Quran, is that God is also grateful. Once we had discussion with some of our friends from American Society of Christian Philosophers or Academy of Christian Philosophers. And I mentioned this, and one of them told me, this is interesting, I have to go back and see if we also have this, that God is grateful. I said, we say God is grateful according to Quran. Not because He needs us, but any little good thing we do, God thanks us. He is Shakir and He is Shakur. Like your child, for example, says, I want to help you with taking for example, plates to the kitchen. Okay? And your child has just started walking. So takes one plate and you are very careful and watching, maybe he falls down, maybe he hurts himself. So you have to watch him, and then he takes the plate to the kitchen. You clap for him and you thank him, and he thinks he has done a very important thing. Indeed, it was much easier for you if he sits just and you do it yourself. But you thank your child. Yeah, because this is the way for him to learn and become in future independent. So God is very grateful to us for every little thing that we do. And He keeps thanking and praising. How much God has thanked Abraham in the Quran, for example. He's so grateful to Abraham that asked us for all history to follow the footsteps of Abraham. He's very grateful. And I always say, it's impossible you do something for God and God would remain in debt to you. He would certainly outdo what you have done for God. So we have to be grateful, but not only grateful to God. We have to also be grateful to the people through whom we received the blessings of God. This is very important. The Prophet said, "Man lam yashkur al-makhluq, lam yashkur al-khaliq." Whoever has not thanked people has not thanked God. So I have to be very grateful to God, but also God wants me to be grateful to my parents. Till end of my life, I should be thankful to my parents. If I am close to God, you should see that I am very thankful to my parents. I am very thankful to my teachers. I have to be very thankful to every person who has done something good for me. Even I have to be thankful for every person that has done something good for the sake of God, not maybe for me, but for others. I have to be thankful. For example, we visited a nursery today. My children are not in that nursery. Yeah. So I am not a parent of any of those children. But shouldn't I be thankful for every teacher, every supporter that is doing something good for those children? Should I be thankful or not? I must be thankful. I have to show my gratitude to God by showing gratitude to everyone who has done something for the sake of God. Whether he has done it for me or others doesn't make difference. I say sometimes, this sentence. I said, don't thank God only for the flowers grown in your garden. Thank God for every flower in the world, whether they are grown in your garden or any garden. This is very important. Every person who does something good in this world, I must appreciate and thank. As God appreciates and thanks. And the third is love. There is nothing that can replace God, love. Once a person asked I think it was fifth Imam, is love part of faith? Imam said, is faith anything other than love? هل الدين إلا الحب? Faith is nothing other than love. But everything is to help us develop love and exercise this love in a wise way. Because love is very powerful, it's like electricity. You need to know how to use this electricity, because For example, if I'm not careful, instead of loving, for example, a spiritual thing, I may develop love for money. I may develop endless love for fame, power, position. I should have wisdom in channeling love to good things, good relations, not bad relations, etc. So, to have love for God and love for the sake of God is very important. In the same way that you are humble before God and before people, you are grateful to God and to people, you have to have love for God and love for people for the sake of God. It's not enough to love God only. If I say, no, God, I love you, I die for you, but I don't bother about people, it's impossible. How can you say to father or mother of a family that, I have great love and respect for you, but I don't care about your children? It's impossible. Because love for a father or mother cannot be separated from their children and anything that belongs to them. Yeah? Love for a teacher cannot be separated from loving students and books of that teacher. Yeah? So, love for God should generate love for the sake of God. Therefore, we have many hadiths that it's not enough just to love God. You have to love for the sake of God. Our Prophet said, you will not enter heaven unless you have faith. And you will not have faith unless you love each other for the sake of God. لن تدخلوا الجنة حتى تؤمنوا ولن تؤمنوا حتى تحابوا. If you don't have love for each other, you don't have faith. Even if you tire yourself in doing acts of worship, if you don't have love, acts of worship have not been working for you. You did that the wrong way. Because acts of worship should add to our love. So, I think Islamic spirituality is very much needed for people who want to work, Muslims who want to work for unity. And we have similarity to Christian spirituality. Without deep spirituality, it's very difficult to work for unity. If you are not humble, if you are not grateful, if you are not loving character, it's very difficult to work for unity. But if you have these characteristics, you can be a good ambassador, good agent for unity. If you are particularly not humble, you cannot work for unity. Because arrogance stops you working for unity. It stops you being godly. It stops you treating people without bias. And then when you work for unity, I think it's one of the best ways to improve your spirituality. Because it's an exercise. In my work for unity, when I'm with people who are not from my own language or my own ethnicity or even my own faith, but I am working for the sake of God, all these elements of spirituality will get good exercise. And this is why when we are together for a few days, we feel we have lots of spiritual energy. And when we go back home for some time, we are in a very high mood. Then little by little go back to normal. So we need a spirituality to work for unity, and the work for unity is very important nutrition for spirituality. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
We reassemble the